Hello and welcome to Genealogy Adventures. I'm Brian Sheffy.
And I'm Donya Williams. How are you guys doing this evening?
Hope you guys are enjoying your Sunday wherever you are. So today we're going to be talking about the facts and the myths of DNA estimates that we all get when we spit in a tube or submit a little cheek swab to the major DNA testing companies. And the reason, and Donnie is going to jump in this in a minute, the reason why we've wanted to revisit this topic again, because we know it's something that we've spoken about a couple of times, is we just keep still just seeing the same kinds of questions being asked on just a proliferation of Facebook genetic genealogy and genealogy related related communities and groups.
Yes. My biggest issue as far as all of that is concerned is how the big DNA places don't share the fact that they need to be letting people know exactly what the DNA does. You know,
Hmm.
you have to and where to go as far as all of that is concerned. Um,
Well, I've got a good question for you, Danya. Where do you think some of this from the consumer, from our perspective, where do you think some of that confusion is coming from, or confusion about expectations about what those tests actually do?
It's not that there's a confusion about what the tests do. It's more or less, I think, well, yeah, it's a confusion about what the tests do. You're right. And I think that they don't understand that the tests are actually something that will give information about family. When the big companies talk about it, they talk about ethnicity. You even have we're not including African ancestry in this, but you got African ancestry, ancestry.com, my heritage, family tree DNA, so on and so forth. And you're looking at all these things, and every last one of them, they push ethnicity. They push, where do I come from? They don't, they throw in, oh, you might find a family here or there. I mean, I've literally seen the ancestry commercials actually say that. Oh, and you might find a cousin here or there. That's it's so much more than that.
Hmm.
So, and those are things that I think people need to understand. That's why when I'm talking to someone, I always tell them, um, you guys, we need to, if you want to get into DNA, let's have a discussion about it before you get into it so you can understand it. And then I go into, and if you do DNA, you need to know which one is the best one for you to go to. Because if you don't want to be contacted, then you don't want to go to Ancestry. Because Ancestry is a contacting spot, point blank.
So remind me again, you did tell me this the other day. Which one of the big kind of commercial testing companies can you join if you don't want to be contacted?
23andMe.
Okay.
23andMe will allow you to block it completely. And if that's all you want, go to 23andMe. I don't know if Family Tree DNA does it or MyHeritage. I don't think that they allow you to block, but I
No.
know for a fact that 23andMe will allow you to block. You are anonymous. It gets to the point where your name can be removed from that DNA family list that pops up that you start to create. Your name will be removed from it. You'll never, matter of fact, if you was to choose Brian right now to say, I don't want to be a part of it. You could do that, and in doing so, your name will come right off of my mother's list. You disappear.
I didn't know that.
Yes, you will disappear. I'm going to interrupt for 1 second. Fiba, are we on Facebook?
Yes,
I'm not getting any live videos. Okay.
I have it on. I have the live video on my phone right now. I'm watching it from your page.
Oh wow. Okay. Why I can't see it?
Okay.
I want to see like seeing our people.
You just probably have to refresh it. But no, that's really good to know about 23andMe. I didn't realize that you could actually have total anonymity.
Yeah, 23andMe will allow you to do total anonymity. You don't, I mean, I had a cousin who tested and she removed herself. I had another cousin who tested and I didn't know he tested until he told me. And then he allowed me to see his stuff and then he removed it again. So he went because he wasn't ready. You know, he wasn't ready to be contacted or anything like that. And 23andMe is a perfect spot for that.
Okay.
But please stop coming to Ancestry and doing this test in Ancestry, and then when people are trying to contact you, you not respond back, because that literally is a spot where everybody is researching and everybody wants to know and everybody is trying to figure out something.
And what you did as a leisurely pastime or for a bit of a giggle, you could actually be, or your DNA could actually be the missing link, the all important answer to someone who's trying to figure out who they're descended from.
Okay.
So you kind of think it's a game, but some of the people that you're going to be matching, that's really crucial information for them.
Okay. That's exactly it.
Now, some of the things that really frustrates me, I wish the big companies could move away from their kind of glossy marketing pitches and expensive TV advertising that make it seem like, oh, this is a fun hobby. Oh, let me spit in a tube and find out what I am.
Yes.
I wish I wish they could prepare people better, because once you spit in that tube or take your cheek swab, you don't know what you're going to get back. So you're doing something for a bit of a giggle, and then you find out that great grandpa was the product of a non-paternity event. Or you
Yes.
find out that your dad was part of a non-paternity event, or you find out that you're adopted. I haven't really seen any of the companies be that kind of transparent about that.
They aren't. I don't think that they are. I don't think they're transparent about any of those things. Like I said, the only thing that those companies actually do is they push the ethnicity report. They push where I come from.
Which again can be really problematic, because I'm thinking about some of the Ancestry commercials. I remember the one, this guy said that he thought he was German.
Yeah.
And then he finds out that he's Italian.
Yeah.
And he's kind of laughing and blah, blah, kind of laughing and really upbeat about it. But for someone else, that could actually destroy their sense of identity.
Right.
You know what I mean? They grow up with the family tales of, oh, we're Irish Italians. Oh, wait a minute. No, we're not. Actually, we're Irish and French.
Right.
Which can really throw people for a bit of a loop.
Exactly.
I also wish that the DNA testing companies would be far, far, far more transparent about how they work, where those estimate numbers actually come from.
Yeah.
And I'm going to give an extreme example. And this is just a made up one. I haven't come across this, just for complete transparency. But say, you're going into your DNA results and you see that you match 30, it says that you're 30% Yoruba. So, I'm Yoruban. I finally have my tribe. But what you may not realize is the reason why you got a 30% on that one is because you match maybe, I don't know, 5 people with Yoruba ancestry in Africa out of a possible pool of, say, 2,000 people that came from that same country.
Wow. Okay, so I'm being checked.
Sorry?
I'm being checked right now on the show. Because I finally got my thing going. And both Kaylee and Martha, they are both saying that Ancestry allows you to opt out of matching. And that's awesome if they do that.
That's true. Okay.
That's awesome. If they do that, that's awesome. But I still say the same thing. I don't understand why you would go to somewhere like Ancestry, where that is a researching spot and people are actually doing research on that spot, and you do DNA and then decide to opt out. That's crazy to me. But if you can opt out, then by all means do so. Don't not answer. It's crazy.
But I'm saying is, what I wish is for that level of transparency so that people can actually see, because all of these estimates are generated from things that are called data sets. So someone has gone, they've either purchased results that other scientists have done, or they've gone into those countries and they've come up with their testing parameters, like you have to have 4 or 5 generations who are all living, all of your ancestors had to be living in, oh, I don't know, Cameroon, for
Right.
instance, for 5
Mm-hmm.
generations. Um, they need to make that much more clearly documented, but to say how many people they actually tested, and then how many of those people that you actually match. Because, like I
Right.
said, if I'm getting 30% Yoruban, but I'm only matching 2 people, or sorry, that's going to be a low number, say about 10 people out of a data set of thousands, then that's kind of telling me, well, my ancestry, what's going on with that Yoruban community in Cameroon, and maybe my actual ancestry lies more in an adjacent country
Right.
than it does there. It's going to have all kinds of permutations. But again, because few of them are that transparent, that's why so many of us get such radically different percentage results when we start testing at multiple DNA sites. Like my ancestry results, some of them bear some semblance to family tree and my heritage, but then other ones are like way out,
Right.
like
So go ahead.
like completely out.
Well, LaBrenda says DNA, she said DNA standards adopted by the Board of Certifications of Genealogists do require that test takers be informed of the potential for emotional distress such as that caused by uncovering unknown relatives. And that's true. They will do that. But these companies don't set out for that. They they just don't set out for that. They don't advertise that. They don't put that out there. And that's one of my issues as far as all of these companies are concerned.
Well,
And the only company, huh?
here's a question for you, Danya. So I wouldn't want to see like a DNA testing advertisement like an American prescription drug. This drug does all these wonderful things, but there's all of these side effects. But they're so I don't know if I would. So I'm just want to get your thoughts on this. I don't know if I would go to that extreme, but I think that there should be some caveats that they're really upfront and transparent about.
I agree. And then and that's my issue. They're not. They post only when I mean, you guys pay attention to those ancestry. If you see an ancestry commercial that comes on, watch what it talks about. They talk about their ethnicity, where they come from, how this person did this and they were doing this. I found my when they're talking about who they found, they're talking about the documents.
Yep.
It's like it's a total difference. They talk about who they found, they're talking about the documents. But when they're talking about their DNA, it's specifically about ethnicity. It does not go into the fact, and oh yeah, by the way, because of the DNA testing that I did, I also found out that I had a non-paternity event. I mean, they're not going to go into it in that manner like that, but it's still gonna. It's not. They're not going to cover it. You got all. I have a cousin whose daughter is doing research, and she sent me a message last week while we were on talking about, oh my God, she's found all of these different people. I'm not ready for this. That's because you weren't told about it. You didn't realize exactly what this is going to do. Even with documents, you're going to find out stuff that you never thought you would find out. Even with documents, you're going to find another child. It's another kid in it.
Now, the other thing that I've noticed as well, maybe European descended Americans are kind of programmed in a different way to accept the fact that they're going to have ethnicities from different parts of Europe. So even though someone might be predominantly Irish, they're like, oh, wait, hey, cool, I've got a little bit of Scandinavian in my DNA, or a little bit of English or Scottish that we never knew it existed. And they kind of take it in their stride and they adapt it. What I'm new, and again, this is a conversation that we've had before. I've seen a lot of African descended people in America who do the DNA tests and they fixate on just one tribal people. one
Mm-hmm.
one African ethnic group. And I guess what frustrates my soul is, unless, you know, we know how many grandparents, great grandparents, going back to like, you know, 10 times great grandparents we all have. For you to only have, for you to only identify with one African ethnic group is impossible, because they were bringing Africans from all over, you know, a lot of different places in Africa. That would mean that every single one of your ancestors could have only been from that one specific ethnic group, and
Right.
that's just a statistical impossibility.
That's the issue that I have with African ancestry. Because African ancestry will tell people that they can let you know exactly what tribe you come from. That is totally impossible. And the reason why I say it's impossible, because you have to actually look at, we have our parent and two grandparents, and wait, I'm sorry. You got, okay, just looking at it from my mother's side. I have my mom, her grandparents, then their parents, which makes it four great grandparents, then all of their parents, which makes it eight great great
Mhm.
grandparents, and then 16, and then 32, and then 64, and then 128. Once you get into that 128 stage, that's what, the fourth great grandparent? Fourth or fifth?
Yep.
Yeah, that's like fourth or fifth great grandparents. You mean to tell me that all 128 of those people came from the same tribe? That's a lie.
Because I'll give you an example. This is the Weeping Time research that involves Butler Island and the coastal islands of Georgia. So you have someone like Major Pierce Butler, who was a major importer of Africans into South Carolina and Georgia. So he wasn't even getting all of his enslaved people. He wasn't even importing enslaved people from the same place. He was. I have to check my. I'm looking at my notes now. Cameroon, Angola, Gambia. So already he's importing Africans from three different
Three
places in
different states,
Africa.
yeah. Mm,
Now, the difference with them is because they were such isolated communities, and they were basically interbreeding amongst themselves with the occasional European DNA being introduced. Even that population of people couldn't claim one tribal affiliation in Africa. You just, they just couldn't.
right. And I was getting my hair braided one time, and when I was getting my hair braided, um, my the person that was braiding my hair, she was like, we're taught our history. And she actually told me, and I think I shared this with you one time, and I might be wrong, but I'm telling you, this came from someone else, and this is something that I have to, go into, but it's interesting nonetheless. According to this lady, Sierra Leone was created from all the people that were left
Mm-hmm.
when the once the slave trade stopped. These were folks that were left. So these were people that were transported from different areas of or different countries in Africa, because eventually they were going to be imported over to, going into that slave trade. But when nobody ever came back for them, Sierra Leone was created. So Sierra Leone in itself is a mix of different countries, because these people stayed there, made their own life right there. So we're talking about an entire group of people who are mixed with a whole bunch of others.
And
But
I'm gonna add an extra wrinkle to the wrinkle that you just brought up. We have free people of color in America who started going back to, well, not back to, they went to Sierra Leone and Liberia starting in the early 1700s, going all the way through to the early 1900s. So you have all of that hybridized African American DNA going back over the Atlantic to those two countries. Because I got excited about 3 or 4 years ago because I'm like, oh, cool, I'm matching someone in Liberia. I've got a Liberia cousin. We started working on his genealogy. Come to find out, he's a descendant of a family called the Outlands from Rich Square, Northampton County,
right,
North Carolina. That's why he was a match. So we didn't, even though we shared an African ancestor, we shared American African ancestor,
Wow.
not an actual African ancestor.
So Harold, I mean not Harold, Hamad said, what's the difference between ancestry and my heritage? Is it worth getting both? In my opinion, you don't have to get my heritage because you can upload your DNA onto the MyHeritage site
Hmm.
and still get the same results that you would get if you were to purchase the kit or not. But Ancestry for me is the best spot simply because that's where we have our trees and our trees can connect to it like that, whereas every other spot we have to go search on Ancestry and then go back to the tree. Everything is right
Well,
in one particular spot.
I'm gonna say that if you're Jewish or you have Jewish DNA, MyHeritage, awesome,
Oh
because
wow.
so many Jewish people and Jewish descended people have tested there. So again, if you don't identify as being Jewish, but you have Jewish DNA and you want to try to work out the ancestor that contributed that to you, MyHeritage is an awesome site, I have to say.
Okay.
Which is, going back to something that Donnie said at the top of the show. Always have a very good understanding of what it is that you want to achieve by DNA testing in the first place. And that will kind of hopefully guide people to making choices that are right and good and appropriate for them.
Yeah, I mean,
Uh,
I think that that's the best move. I as researchers who help others, and there are a lot of them on here today. LaBrenda and Deborah and we even got Ellen. Ellen Butler is up here, and so I want to say hi to you guys.
hey
Um,
guys.
yeah, I want to say hi. You guys have not. I haven't talked to you in a while, but we got a lot of them up here, and I think we all at some point or another have to be responsible if no one else is being responsible to make sure that we let them know. Now, I'm not certified, but I've been doing this for so long.
Mhm.
I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna go through the steps and become certified. But
Mhm.
until that time, until I do those things, I see that I'm already on some of the stuff that was said. Like LaBrenda said, the board certification, you have to talk to them about it before you go through it. Well, that's something that I already do. I refuse. I am not gonna let anybody that I'm working with do DNA without having that discussion.
Yeah.
And it's just that simple because I've seen the I've seen the effects of it. You have some people who are happy that they found a non-paternity event, that they found a sister or a brother, and then you have those that are not. They're not happy, and it wasn't that person's fault that they were born. It just wasn't. Nor was it the person's fault that happened to be the one to find them. It's not that person's fault either, because nobody can be found unless the other person tests. And
Mhm.
these are things that people don't get and don't understand. You can't be found if you don't want to be. I don't, you know.
Now, what we've been talking about up to this point has been autosomal DNA tests.
Right.
I'm going to also say that if you're a male and you do a Y-DNA test, and if you're a woman, if you do the mitochondrial DNA test, you're not even going to get one ethnic affiliation even with those. Because when you start digging into the segments, you can start tracking the evolution of that DNA. So using my mother's mtDNA results as an example, she got an ancient clear signal for the the Horn of Africa on the East Coast, and you could almost plot her matrilineal lines progression across Africa, starting from the oldest part of the mtDNA to the newest, well, to the most recent, relatively speaking, like over the last 1,000 years. And you can actually map how they went from the east coast of Africa, they went to Lake Chad, and they kind of dipped a little further south, but they steadily went across all the way over to the west until they ended up in Cameroon, which is
Hmm.
where, which is where they came from. So even that, you can't just identify with one African group of people.
Right.
You can say up until 1,000 years ago, the mtDNA is with Cameroon. Go 1,000 years before that, seems to be coming from the Congo region. 1,000 years before that, it's Lake Chad. Going
Exactly.
back. But without wanting to sound like Donnie Downer, um, there are interesting ways that you can use DNA, and this is something else that I wish that the big DNA testing company, actually, I wish they would focus on this more than the find that, oh, you can wear a debele and, or, whatever kind of Lederhosen or whatever kind of ethnic garb. You can get really good clues, ancestral clues, using DNA. So I'll explain. Now, my Jewish great grandfather was pretty easy to figure out because I got this wedge of 20% Ashkenazi Jewish DNA from Belarus. Well, there's only one person that could have been. That was great granddad. So it was kind of helpful to know that that's what he was, to kind of narrow down who this missing man was. But like my 4 times great grandmother Venus Jossi, she's the reason why I have. Is it Beninese? Is that the correct way of saying someone from Benin?
Yeah, yes. I would say just someone from Benin.
If anyone wants to correct me, I'm open for it, but I'm going to say Beninese DNA because we found out that she came from Benin. So that was really good to confirm. I know that the reason why I have Angolan is because I have ancestors like Henry Kumbi, Anthony Johnson from Virginia, all those Angolans that came over that were here in 1619 and 1620. So they're but it's working with the paper trail, reading a lot of books, doing a lot of research, and then it's kind of cool to be able to actually put names to those results. I'm not even worried about the percentage, just the results.
Right.
So, and for you, for your dad's side of the family, I would imagine you would be looking more for any kind of connection to Barbados. And then when you get those connections to Barbados and you can see just the rough admixture that they have, that will make your admixtures make more sense.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. You're absolutely right. We
Because
have a lot of people who were adopted and found their family, and that's responding up here today. It's actually very awesome. Are you looking at this? I mean, you guys are really giving a story, and I'm so glad about it. And I shared this in the genealogy page, so I'm hoping that some of them will jump in and help and try to explain certain things about it. LaBrenda made the comment that men have the mitochondrial DNA also, they just don't pass it on, and that's something that a lot of people don't understand. That's where you go back to high school biology and you learn about your X chromosomes and your Y chromosome and how the men have XY and the women are XX. Well, the X is women, it stands for women, while the Y stands for man. And this is how a child is born. This is where that a man decides whether a female is going to have a male or a female child, because he's either going to pass on that X chromosome or he's going to pass on that Y chromosome. If he passes on that Y chromosome, then you're going to have a boy. If he passes on that X chromosome, then you're going to have a girl. And a lot of people don't seem to take that high school biology and apply it to what this is. But that's the whole thing about to me, that's the whole thing about genealogy. You take your old school learning and you can now apply it and then learn more from it and make it right. Because I'm telling you, history, I loved history in school, but something was missing. Every time I did, it was always something missing. And now that I've done my genealogical research, now I know what's missing. It's there, and these are things that are people need to start like really using common sense and just be like, oh, you know what, I didn't know that. I think that's what it. But that's just me.
So I'm happy to take questions on what I'm about to say, because I hope it's not going to be confusing. Because even though I've dismissed the percentage of the ethnicity, one thing that those percents can give you is an indication of the recency that ethnicity entered into your DNA. I'm going to use a couple of examples. So I have Native American ancestors, but I don't have much in the way of Native American ancestry. My sister seems to have inherited a little more of it than I did. My brother and I are pretty much on par. Well, the reason why we have such a low level of Native American DNA is because that stopped being introduced into our genome by about 1715. I think, pretty sure that was the last kind of full-blooded Native American ancestor that we had. So from 715 to when I was born in the 1960s, that just steadily decreased because it was no longer being introduced or introduced in any great number into the genome. So the fact that I have it varies every time Ancestry updates. It can go up, it can go down, but it usually stays about the 1.3 percent mark. That's telling me that's old. That
But
really.
see, here's my thing about Native American, and y'all may come after me for that. But before I say this, David Lawrence Grant said it's pronounced Beninoise.
Benioise.
Benioise.
French, of course. Thank you.
Wahz. So Beninoise.
Thank you, Ms.
But
Lawrence.
yes. But from what I have been told by my Sheila, Native Americans really don't test. They don't do it. So
they have a good reason.
Yeah, they have good reason as to not test. But here's the thing. So how do you know that that's Native American DNA?
The people that I match.
Huh?
The people that I match, and they've got well-researched trees.
Okay. Because I've always wondered that. I'm like, because my mom, according to my mother, her grandfather was full-blood Native American. But if that's the case, this is her grandfather. She should have a huge percentage.
Yeah, she should. Well,
she does.
Is her grandfather?
It's her grandfather. It's her father's mother. Okay. Papa Johnny.
If she's not showing any Native, especially at that generational level, if she's not showing any Native American, then it's just not there.
That's my point. That's my point. But then my cousin Richard, he shows it. But is he showing it from his father's side, which would be my mother's first cousin? His father is my mom's first cousin. Mm-hmm. Or is it from his mom's side? Because at this point,
are his parents related in any way?
Oh, come on now.
I gotta ask, because if they're not, then it's clearly coming from his mother's side.
At this point, I'm not saying that mom doesn't have any Native American, but it's like
No. For a grandparent,
she's supposed to have more than what she has, most definitely.
Yeah, she should have a healthy.
She should have a double-digit percentage of Native American DNA. But my mom has like 1.6. It's like
I bet you anything that's Billy. I bet you anything that's Billy the Indian, who was enslaved by Thomas Peterson in Newbury.
Yeah, I mean, but to say that, because she says that at 5 years old, she remembers going to Papa Johnny's funeral and him laying in the casket. And, older people, when they talk about somebody being Native American, they come up with the hair. She was like, but he was dressed in full Native garb in this funeral, and his hair just went all the way down. So not only was it the hair, she said it was Native. She remembers it. That's one of the things that she remembers at 5 years old. But you don't give me the DNA for that. Nor I don't even have the DNA for that. Even my percentage should be higher than what it is. None of us should be under one. None of us should be single digit technically. Maybe my daughter when she tests, or my children start to get to the single digits. But I think even I should have a double digit number as far as Native American DNA, and I don't. It's all single. Every everyone who has tested so far, it's a very, very small amount, a trace amount.
But again, for our family in South Carolina, I'm only aware of one documented Native American who was enslaved by a family that enslaved our family. So no doubt there's more, because we've only taken that research back to what 1750s. So who knows what happened before that point. But what I was saying is, if that DNA isn't steadily coming into your gene pool, it's gonna wash out within a couple of generations.
Yeah, LaBrenda said, Skip Gates says it's because no one wanted to claim European ancestry, so anyone with long dark hair was part Indian. I don't know. I mean, my thing is, as far as that's concerned, if you're not claiming European ancestry, then is it really Native American DNA that we're looking at? Because you have a whole bunch of Europeans who are claiming Native American ancestry. It's a rock of them claiming Native American ancestry, but they're white. So if that's the case, what kind of DNA are we looking at? That's the only portion of DNA that I truly, truly question. Learning the fact that there's not a lot of Native Americans who are testing, and then looking at the fact that you have a lot of European folks who are claiming Native American ancestry, I'm confused with it.
Well, again, that's either a conversation that has happened, is happening, or ought to happen within the Native American community. I'm not aware of those discussions. But if anyone should be able to set that criteria, or to just to kind of have ownership of that conversation, it should be Native Americans.
Yeah, and I agree with that. I definitely agree with that. And I think even Chief Langley made some comments about that before, because they don't test.
Well, because again, given Native American history with the American government, I can't blame them for that, because they don't know how their DNA is going to be used against them.
Right.
Because there's always that. So as I was saying, so even though I wouldn't hold too much stock in the percents in and of themselves, the ethnicity percentages, they can give you an idea of recency. So if you're hitting the 20% mark on anything, that could mean a few things. Either you have a lot of ancestors who came from that part of the world, or it's very recent DNA. It's like my Jewish great grandfather is perfect. He is the only fully Jewish ancestor that I have within nine generations. So that's the reason why I have such a large amount of Jewish DNA, because it was relatively, it was introduced into the family genome in 1910. That's not that long ago. Whereas my Nigerian mystifies me, because I think it's about that Nigerian apparently accounts for almost a quarter of my 30-odd% of African DNA. So that's a substantial amount.
Yeah.
I have not come across a documented ancestor coming from Nigeria. So I'm stumped. It's clearly I have it. Clearly I've got more than one Nigerian ancestor. So what that's kind of telling me is there are a lot of Nigerians coming in. And this can also help your research. If you can figure out who the main importers operating out of certain African countries were and where they were bringing them into the United States, can be a lead for you in terms of doing your research. So said during the weeping time, knowing where these African importing families were importing the Africans from, because they advertised. You look at the South Carolina Gazette, colonial newspaper, saying things like, Butler and Middleton importing 300 prime Negroes from Angola, 1753. So I've got it, it gives the name of the ship, it gives the name of the captain, how many people were, how many enslaved people were on the ship, where it landed in Charleston, South Carolina, and what the sales date was going to be. So I've got 5 major key pieces of information that I can use to, one, try to figure out which one of the enslaved Africans I descend from, but I've got a specific place to look. So, at some point, someone from the research project team will be going to Gambia, Angola, and Cameroon to hopefully find further records that are in there.
Yeah, I would love to do that. For more reasons than one. One person, Jay Spears, says, it's a comment from Jerome. It says, if you are able, the beauty of Y-DNA, mtDNA, and atDNA testing with multiple testing companies can provide the researcher with all kinds of clues to compare, contrast, and dramatically further your overall understanding of who you are. Test all available siblings, parents, aunts, uncles, and cousins, if you can, to get even better insights. And then he says, loving your discussion. Thank you so much.
Thank you for that. So hopefully, I know that I was a bit harsh about DNA testing to start with, but hopefully, within this last half an hour, what Donnie and I have been chatting about, getting you to think about those percentages and those reports in a different way. That
Right.
There are usable clues, just not the ones that the DNA companies kind of go on about.
A.E. Barlow says, what about the centimorgans? Can you explain those numbers?
Can I do that in the time that's left? I might write an article about that, but honestly, Google the name Roberta Estes. So that's Roberta, and then it's E-S-T for Tommy, E-S. She is like the queen of that kind of in-depth discussion. We're trying very hard to get her on the show. I would love to have her on the show. She's a good one, and there's another website or blog called DNA Explained.
Yeah.
Also awesome. And then there's the I can't remember what it stands for. It's called ISOG. I, S for sugar, O-G-G. It's the International Society of Genetic Genealogy. I think that's what it stands for. So any one of those 3, and Donnie, can you remind me later to actually post links to each one of those?
I already put Google. I put Google Roberta Estes up there, and I'm gonna tell them about. I'm getting ready to write ISOGG and who else?
DNA Explained.
DNA Explained. Okay.
Yeah. Excellent question, by the way, but the answer to that is longer than what I've got time for.
ISOGG has a Facebook group.
They do.
They do. So look up the Facebook group, ISOGG. I'm putting that up there.
But basically things like centimorgans and SNPs, just to give you a really bog standard layman's kind of explanation, is those are just numbers that tell you how much DNA you share with matches. So in things like in terms of the length of the segments that you match on, because there's a whole discussion about that, because people, and it's a good conversation, it's a good debate to have, whether small amounts of shared DNA are valuable, useful, reliable, correct. Because again, with DNA testing, especially if you're dealing with really, really small segments, you can get things like false positives, you can get things like false negatives. So it's not a straightforward answer.
Right. LaBrenda gave some stuff. She says centimorgans are not physical distances. They are estimates based on probabilities. And then she said the higher the CM, the more closely you are related. That's the basis of it, of what the centimorgans mean, what those numbers mean. The higher the number is, because you can. But the thing about,
I was also quickly going to say, and also an indication of how recently your common, what generational level your
Right.
common ancestor is.
See, but now here's the thing. Now I'm getting ready to bring Edgefield into this circle. We can't do this show without speaking of Edgefield. And the reason being not because that's where our research really kind of takes us, but because I'm getting ready to let all of you know that if you have research in the Edgefield area, you're going to be opened up to every possible thing you can think of. And that's why Edgefield is always brought up. That's why the 96th district is always brought up. So when you do that, this is why we bring it up. So with that being said, is there a problem? And I don't know if you can answer this in this particular time period. Does the DNA that's mixed in our family, does it cause an issue? So in other words, I have a cousin who, without his DNA, we with his DNA, we found out that his father and mother were related. So because his father and mother is related, is he getting double dosage of DNA? And does that make his DNA higher, making him a higher match to my mom because he's getting DNA from both sides? Because apparently his father is also related to my mother, and his mother is her niece. You understand what I'm trying to say?
Well, you and I share way more DNA for what are we? We're fourth cousins to each other than we should because we just share too many damn common ancestors.
Right. We're only listed as fourth cousins. And the funny thing is that on all of the different sites, they put us as fourth cousins. Every last one of the sites, My Heritage, Family Tree, Ancestry, and even the Gem Match, they all make Brian and I fourth cousins. But guys, me and Brian share 8 different lines. 8.
And we knew we have more once we get you out of South Carolina.
Yeah.
We know
We won't leave South.
because we know we're going to share common ancestors in North Carolina. We know we're going to share even more common ancestors back in Virginia.
Oh yeah, well we know some of the Virginia ones because those are the ones that travel from Virginia to the 96. And thank you for correcting me, LaBrenda. It's not Edgefield, it's the 96 that is the issue. You know, that place, if you have people that come from there, put on your big girl or your big boy underwear because that place is going to give you the headache of a lifetime, and you'll understand why I curse so much.
Well, I'm glad you brought that up because wait until I have the pleasure of introducing you to places like Northampton County in North Carolina, Halifax, Warren, Mecklenburg, then up in Virginia, you've got Southampton County again, Mecklenburg, all through the tidal region, and Northern Neck. It's just cousins marrying cousins. Honest, where our ancestry is concerned, there's no getting away from it. And again, same with people who had pioneering ancestors who went into like the really early settlers of Tennessee and Kentucky, coming out of Virginia, Pennsylvania, and North Carolina. Again, because there were so few families there, they were just marrying each other over and over and over again.
Yeah. So Henry was like 8, and yes, Henry, it's 8, and we do expect to find more. Don Phillips said endogamy is when there are relations on both sides, and it does affect the results. And that's my point. Yeah, endogamy is huge, and I'm not even gonna say just in my family. In 96, it's a huge thing. And with that being said, when I look at my mom's DNA compared to the cousin that I was just talking about, this guy is my mother's great nephew, but he is at almost 1,000 CMs with my mother. It's not, it shouldn't be that high.
Yeah.
Not a great nephew. It really shouldn't be that high.
But again, if you have any sort of deep roots in this country, that's kind of what you're going to come up against. Because if anyone had told me that my parents were related to each other, I would have never believed them. But depending on what line you look at, they are either seventh, eighth, ninth, or 10th cousins. And this is where it gets even more interesting. They don't share common Black ancestry or African descended ancestry. All of their common ancestors to date, European.
Yeah, yeah, and it's just it's an amazing thing, and I think that's what keeps me in on this whole genealogical search, because you start to find out things that's crazy. Alinda said, "Whoa, that's a sibling," when I was talking about my cousin, but he really is not a sibling. But that's how much DNA he comes in. He comes in with so much DNA. That's because, listen, my grandparents were related to each other. My grandfather's great grandmother and my grandmother's grandmother were sisters. So when we go down the line of, as far as who my cousin's mother was, my cousin's mother was my mother's niece. It's his father's side that ends up throwing in that thing, that extra stuff. And come to find out, they were connected again through the Bug and Yeldell family. So it came right back. It's the same, it's like the same DNA coming right back. Right, Alinda, or first cousin, but he's actually her great nephew. Thank
Thank
you.
you, Fiva.
Yeah, he's actually her great nephew, and it's just amazing. And we have so many like that, and that's one of the issues that Brian and I were talking about recently when we were talking about my mom being, she is a beautiful 81-year-old that when you look at her you can't tell it, but it's, to me it's almost impossible for her to have a first cousin younger than my daughter, who will be 27 this year. My daughter's already 26 years old. And there's a child that's on her DNA list that's about 21. Looks like she's anywhere between 23, 24, 25. She looks very young. And this girl I just don't believe that she is my mother's first cousin. I don't believe that. My
Yeah.
mom is the baby of 14, meaning she was the last one to be born. How can she have a first cousin that young? I don't see it.
Yep, no, she has definitely stumped you. So I guess one thing that I would encourage people to how to approach this, instead of claiming your ethnicity percentages as your identity, think about them as hints that you can use.
Right.
Think about ways that you could actually use that ethnicity to either smash through a brick wall, understand where your people were coming from, even kind of what would be the most, what's the word that I'm looking for? What ports that enslaved Africans were coming into in the Americas is perhaps the earliest part of your origin story. Like I said, that's what I've been doing with mine. That's what's was so great about finding out where Venus Jossi actually came from. You know, to have that verified, that made that percentage of my ethnicity make more sense, and I understood that it was actually more relevant.
Yeah.
Said these Nigerians though, they're keeping me hopping.
Yeah.
I just don't know.
I think I think, that name, that the first name at the top of my book, that's a Nigerian family, and you share with them, if I'm not mistaken.
What family is that?
Wada. But at the top of the book, the family name is Abocho, Abocho. But I think you share with them.
Well, that would make sense because the Nigerians coming, because my dad has like next to none. So that actually makes sense. That's coming in from Edgefield. Well, 96.
Well, this was the family that they thought they were the first generation in this area. How about that one?
Oh, okay.
And when they tested her dad is like my mom's third cousin. So it's a high match. And then it just threw them completely off because they thought that it was, you know.
Well, again, remember, I was really stumped and I asked for years, why do so many of us coming out of the 96 have Swedish DNA?
uh,
No one seemed to know who the Swedish families were. No one knew anything about them. And remember, I just stumbled across it by accident. Actually, the, the Swedish people we descend from were never in Edgefield. They were in Newbury, which was part of the 96.
Yeah.
As soon as I started reading about the Stidham family, settlers of New Sweden on the East Coast, I'm like, okay, it's taken me 20 years, but I finally have the names of my Swedish ancestors coming out of the old 96.
That's right. That's right. That's exactly.
Still, we're still trying to figure out who the Jewish family in the old 96 was. Because again, a lot of us have traced Jewish ancestry coming back out of the 18th century, out of the 96. I'm still trying to find out who they were.
Yeah.
A lot of us have that.
Yeah, I say that to anybody that's watching, that's tuning in, you would be lucky to be a part. As much as I cuss and fuss and everything when it comes to where my family research stems from, you guys would be truly lucky to have to research in that area, because I may not be board certified, but I'm telling you, I have about as much information as the next certified person. And it's all because of Edgefield, because I've been given or let me rephrase that, all because of the 96, because both Brian and I both, and anybody who works in that area, and that includes LaBrenda and Ellen and Bernice Butler and Nathan, all of us, Hamad and Loretta, we all have gotten so much information. Martha and Missy, we've gotten so much information from Edgefield that it is ridiculous. The fact that we can get what we've gotten, and that was the place that made me learn certain things that you would never think to learn about. And I mean, I got to give it his props.
I will say that the 96th District of South Carolina has thrown more challenges my way than pretty much, I'm just double checking this before I say it, than pretty much any other county that I've researched.
Yeah.
Anywhere else.
Yeah. You just explained Hamad's 3% sweetened DNA. That's what he said.
High five, Hamad. Yeah, you need to look at the Stidhams, Stidham, out of Red. Oh, it's Newbury. I want to call it Red Bush. It's Red something. Newbury, Quaker community.
Right.
They're there.
Well, we are 5 minutes out. I want to thank you guys.
I'm going to let Dania take the victory lap on this one, but I just want to kind of set her up so that she can take the victory lap on this one. We have a show for you on the 17th of this month, 17th of May, 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Y'all, we have Jane Elliott.
Oh my God.
Brown-eyed, blue-eyed. Dania, take your victory lap.
Woo, woo, woo. When I tell you guys, for those that don't know who Jane Elliott is and Google it. Jane Elliott is the creator of the blue eyes versus brown eye experiment that she did back in the 60s with her third grade class. And then she turned around and she's been, going through it ever since. And her whole issue is about race and why, and how she believes that there is no such thing as white people. We're all one race. We're the human race. And that was something that my mom taught me forever. And this is just crazy. You guys have no idea how excited I am to be able to have this lady on this show. So this show, even though on the 17th, we're still going to be based on genealogy, but we're gonna tackle race in this show. This show, we're tackling race issues. And we want you guys to follow. We want you guys to share. And most importantly, we want you guys to question, because this is your opportunity to really talk to someone who digs deep into racial issues and everything. And
Not only dug into it, did it in a time period where that seriously was not a cool thing to do.
right. I mean, she had things that happened to her children. She was whisked away by a carload of black people to save her life. I mean, they're just things. She's just awesome. And I'm just extremely excited about that show. So I really hope that you all, check in and everything. Yes, Henry, I am extremely excited. I'm extremely excited. So, yeah. May 17th, and you're gonna see a lot of push as far as marketing is concerned when it comes to that, because we want everybody to love. We don't want to miss anyone for this one. So this is the same lady that was on Red Table Talk with Jada Pinkett, if that helps any. And yeah, we're gonna prepare you guys for that. Thank you, Linda. Linda says she's gonna add it to her calendar.
So thank you so much for sharing your Sunday with us. I am Brian.
Yes, and I'm Danya, and you guys have a great, great day and stay safe. Don't get sick.
Absolutely.